All right, so let's dive right in. Today we're tackling something that I think is on every small business owner's mind these days, myself included, and that's cybersecurity.
It's definitely a hot topic, and for good reason.
I was reading recently that a shocking 60% of small businesses that get hit with a cyber attack end up closing down within 6 months. 60%. I mean, that's huge, you know? And it's got me thinking because, as we're all using more and more of these automation tools, which are amazing, don't get me wrong, but it does make you wonder about the security side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. The more complex systems you have in place, the more potential points of vulnerability there are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, many small businesses are just not equipped to handle a cyber attack, especially compared to those big corporations with their massive IT departments.
Right, exactly. And it's not just about having the latest software either, is it? It's about understanding the risks and having the right protocols in place. So how do we even begin to unpack this whole cybersecurity thing? I keep hearing this phrase, data-driven vulnerability, and honestly, it sounds a bit intimidating. What does that even mean for someone like me running a small business?
So data-driven vulnerability, huh? It sounds scarier than it actually is. Essentially it boils down to this. The more data you have, the more attractive a target you become for hackers.
Okay, so it's like the juicier the target, the more appealing it is to the sharks.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it this way. Imagine two businesses on the same street, right? One is a small bakery. They take cash. They have a handwritten customer list. Pretty low tech. Now, the other business, they're a fancy clothing boutique. They've got online sales, a customer database with credit card info, the whole shebang. Which business do you think is more appealing to a hacker?
Okay, yeah, the clothing boutique for sure. Even though they're both small businesses, the type of data they hold makes all the difference. So it's not just about the quantity of data, it's also about the quality, or in this case, the sensitivity of the information, right?
100%. And that's where this automation piece comes into play even more because think about it. You're integrating CRM systems, cloud-based accounting, all these amazing tools, but each one of those is a potential entry point for a hacker if it's not properly secured.
So it's like with each new piece of tech, each new system, I'm essentially adding another door to my business that needs to be locked and bolted, and maybe even have one of those security guards posted outside.
Yeah, you could say that it's all about layers of protection.
Speaking of protection, let's talk about GDPR for a second.
Yeah.
I have to admit, whenever I hear that acronym, I sort of tune it out like, oh, that's something those big companies have to deal with. But does it actually apply to smaller businesses too?
It's a really good question and a common misconception. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just a small fish, GDPR doesn't apply to me. But the reality is it can, even if you don't think you're dealing with a lot of personal data.
Okay, so like how? So give me an example.
Well, let's say you have a website, right? And you're using Google Analytics to track your visitors. Sounds harmless enough, right?
Yeah, seems pretty standard.
But if you're collecting any data from someone in the EU, even just their IP address or their browsing activity on your site, you could be subject to GDPR regulations.
Wow, I had no idea it was that far-reaching. So even if I don't specifically target customers in the EU, I still need to be mindful of their data privacy regulations. This is where things get really tricky.
And we haven't even gotten to the really fun stuff yet. AI manipulation.
Oh, boy. Now that sounds ominous. Is that something we need to be worried about right now, or is that more of a future threat?
It's definitely becoming more and more relevant, especially as we see more and more AI being integrated into, well, everything.
Okay, so let's break it down a bit. For someone like me, who's still trying to figure out how to use all the features on my new coffee maker, how could AI manipulation actually impact my business? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say you decide to really step up your automation game and you get yourself a fancy new AI-powered inventory management system. It does everything. Tracks your stock levels, predicts demand, even places orders with your suppliers automatically. Sounds pretty dreamy, right?
Sign me up.
But now, let's say a hacker figures out a way to access that system. They could manipulate the data that your AI is using to make decisions. Suddenly, your super smart system isn't looking so smart anymore, is it?
Okay, I'm officially nervous now. Like, what kind of manipulation are we talking about here?
Well, they could make it seem like you have way less inventory than you actually do, causing your system to place a massive order for stuff you don't need at all. Or they could mess with the delivery addresses, sending your products to who knows where.
Okay, this is way too much for my Monday morning. Seriously, this is making me want to chuck my smartphone in the river and go live in a yurt.
I hear you. It can definitely feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But before you swear off technology forever, the good news is There are actually some pretty practical steps you can take to protect yourself.
Okay, because I was about to say, I need solutions, not just scary stories.
Don't worry, we've got you covered. It really doesn't have to be that overwhelming. There are some surprisingly simple things you can do to really boost your security. And honestly, one of the most important ones is just keeping all your software updated.
Okay, yeah, I know I've heard that before, but seriously, how much of a difference does that really make?
Trust me, it's huge. You wouldn't believe how many businesses get tripped up by some known vulnerability, something that's already been patched, but they just haven't gotten around to updating their software.
All right, well, I plead guilty to that myself sometimes. I mean, those update reminders can be pretty relentless, and let's be honest, who has time for that, right?
I get it. But the good news is, most systems these days, you can actually automate those updates. It's like setting it and forgetting it. Your computer does all the work in the background while you sleep, and boom, you've got the latest security patches without lifting a finger.
Okay, that's a game changer. Automatic updates it is. Now, what else have you got for me?
All right, let's talk about access control.
Oh, yeah, passwords, right. I've got that covered. I use one of those password manager apps now, so all my passwords are super complicated and impossible to remember, just the way it should be, right?
That's definitely a great start. I mean, strong, unique passwords are non-negotiable these days. But it's actually about more than just passwords. It's about limiting who has access to what, especially when it comes to your most sensitive data.
Okay, so it's like, just because you have the key to the front door doesn't mean you should have access to every single room in the house, right?
Exactly. And this is where multi-factor authentication comes in, or MFA as it's usually called.
Yes, MFA. I've actually managed to set that up for a few things, but I have to say, sometimes it's a bit of a pain. You know, you're trying to log in quickly, and then it's like, hold on, we need to send a code to your phone. And you're like, fine, but hurry up about it.
I hear you. I've been there. But trust me, that extra step, even though it feels like a hassle sometimes, it's worth it. Think of it like having a deadbolt on your door, you know? It's just that extra layer of protection that can make all the difference.
Okay, strong passwords, MFA, check, and check. Now, what about the cloud? That seems like a whole other can of worms, security-wise.
Oh, the cloud. It's amazing, right? So much potential. But security is definitely something you can't afford to overlook. First things first, choose your provider carefully. Don't just go with the cheapest or the first one that pops up on Google.
So it's like checking the references for a contractor, right? You want to make sure they've got a good track record, especially when it comes to something as important as my business data.
Yes, 100%. Look for a provider with a solid reputation. Check if they've got any security certifications, read reviews from other businesses, and don't be afraid to ask them questions directly about their security practices. And once you've found a provider you trust, make sure you're using encryption.
Encryption? Isn't that like some kind of super secret code stuff? I'm not sure I even understand how that works.
Basically, it's like sending your data in a secret message that only the intended recipient can decode. So even if someone manages to intercept it, they can't actually read it without the decryption key.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So it's like a digital lockbox for my data.
Pretty much. And speaking of keeping things secure, we can't forget about the human element here, which means employee training.
Oh boy, employee training. You mean those boring cybersecurity videos that everyone just clicks through as fast as possible?
Well, hopefully not. The key is to make security training an ongoing conversation, not just a one-time thing. You want to create a culture of security awareness in your business.
Okay, so less cheesy videos, more like, I don't know, real-life scenarios, practical tips, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Teach them about phishing scams, how to create strong passwords, how to spot a suspicious link, and make it fun. You know, people remember things better when they're engaged. Maybe have some quizzes, some prizes, who knows?
Okay, that's a good idea. I can already picture the Cybersecurity Champion trophy on our office shelf. Now, I know this might sound a little morbid, but what happens if, despite all of our best efforts, we still get hit with an attack?
That's why you need a disaster recovery plan.
Ooh, disaster recovery. Now that sounds serious. Isn't that something that only, like, big corporations with those fancy war rooms need to worry about?
Not at all. Every business, big or small, should have a plan in place. Basically, it outlines what you'll do to get back up and running as quickly as possible if your systems go down. Think of it like an insurance policy for your business.
Okay. I guess it's better to be safe than sorry, right? But what does that even involve, creating a disaster recovery plan? Seems complicated.
It's not as bad as you might think. Start by figuring out what's absolutely critical to your business. Like, what systems or data can you absolutely not live without? Then think about how you would get those things back up and running if they were suddenly gone.
Okay, so I need to make a list of my digital lifelines, essentially, and then figure out how to resuscitate them if they flatline.
Got it. And make sure those backups are rock solid. Because if something happens, you'll need to be able to restore your data from a safe, clean backup.
All right, noted. Regular backups, disaster recovery plan, check. Anything else? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
Just one more thing, and this is a big one, especially with all the automation tools we've been talking about, APIs.
APIs. Uh-oh, now you're just using big words to make me feel intimidated. What on earth is an API?
Okay, so you know how many of these tools you're using? They connect to other systems, right? They're sharing data back and forth, maybe sending notifications, triggering actions in other apps.
Right, like my online store talks to my payment processor, my email marketing system, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And the way they communicate, the language they use, so to speak, is through these things called APIs. It stands for Application Programming Interface, but basically, you can think of APIs as those little messengers that run between different software, making sure they can talk to each other.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Digital messengers. Got it.
But the thing is, just like any communication channel, APIs need to be secure. Otherwise, it's like leaving a back door wide open for hackers.
So it's not enough to just secure my own systems. I also need to make sure that any outside connections, those APIs, are also locked down tight.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You wouldn't just leave your front door open. You'd also want to make sure your back door, your windows, any potential entry points are also secured.
Okay, that makes sense. So many things to think about, but honestly, this has been so helpful. I feel like I'm finally starting to wrap my head around this whole cybersecurity thing.
And that's the key. The more you know about the risks and the steps you can take to mitigate them, the better off you'll be. And remember, cybersecurity isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And like any good journey, it's much more enjoyable with the right guide by your side.
Speaking of guides, you mentioned earlier that AI could actually be an ally in cybersecurity. I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay, so we've talked about all the scary stuff, the threats, the vulnerabilities, but now I'm really curious to hear more about this whole AI as our cybersecurity buddy thing.
Because it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Give me some hope here. What can AI actually do to help us fight back against these cyber villains?
Well, imagine this, right? You've got this AI system that's constantly monitoring your network, looking for any suspicious activity. It's like having a digital guard dog that never sleeps, never gets distracted.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So instead of me trying to be the security guard, watching every single screen 24/7, I can outsource that to AI.
Exactly. And the thing is, AI is really good at detecting patterns, like way better than humans are. So it can pick up on those subtle anomalies, those little red flags that might slip past us, you know? So it's like having a superpowered detective who can sift through all the data, all the noise, and zero in on the important stuff, the stuff that actually signals a threat.
Precisely. And it can do it much faster, much more efficiently than any human could.
Okay, so I'm sold on the concept, but let's get specific. What kinds of threats can these AI tools actually help us with? Give me some real-world examples.
Well, one of the biggest ones is malware. You know those nasty little programs that can really wreak havoc on your systems?
Oh yeah, I've had my fair share of run-ins with malware. Not fun.
Well, AI can actually help prevent those infections in the first place.
Okay, now that's impressive. How does that even work?
These AI systems are trained on massive data sets of known malware. So they can recognize those malicious codes, those patterns, and they can block them before they even have a chance to get a foothold.
So it's not just about reacting to threats after they happen, it's about anticipating them, getting ahead of the game.
That's the goal. And it's not just malware either. AI can also be a huge help with phishing attacks.
Oh, phishing. Don't even get me started. It seems like every day I get another email that's like, we've detected suspicious activity on your account. Please click here to update your password. And those emails are getting so sophisticated, they look so real.
I know, right? It's really scary how good they're getting. But that's exactly where AI can help. It can analyze the content of the email, the sender, the links, everything, and flag it if something seems off.
Wow, so they can see through those sneaky little tricks that we humans might fall for. That's incredible. But I do have to ask this. Are we, by relying on AI for our cybersecurity, are we just setting ourselves up for a bigger fall down the line? Like, what if the AI fails? What if it gets outsmarted?
Those are really important questions. And honestly, it's something we need to be very mindful of as we integrate more and more AI into our lives. We can't become overly reliant on technology.
So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly. AI is a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet. It's not a replacement for human intelligence.
So we still need to stay vigilant, stay informed, and make sure we're not putting all our cybersecurity eggs in the AI basket, right?
100%. And this is why employee training is still so important.
Right. Because at the end of the day, technology can only take you so far. It's often human error, that accidental click on a bad link that can bring the whole system crashing down.
You got it. So, yes, AI can be an incredible ally in cybersecurity, but it's not a replacement for human awareness, education, and good old-fashioned common sense.
Okay, so it sounds like the future of cybersecurity is going to be a fascinating blend of human and artificial intelligence, each playing to their strengths, hopefully working together to keep us all safe from the bad guys.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for shedding some light on this incredibly important and, let's be honest, sometimes overwhelming topic. I know I feel a lot more informed and maybe just a little bit less terrified about the whole cybersecurity landscape.
Well, that's what we're here for. And remember, knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about the threats and the solutions, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you found this episode insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, you don't have to be a tech whiz to keep your business safe. Just stay curious, stay informed, and stay one step ahead of the cyber game. Until next time, stay safe out there.